Sure, the Republicans can nominate somebody to the Supreme Court, and the Senate can confirm that nomination from President Trump, but should he and should they? I'm Scott Ott, and this episode of Bill Whittle Now is brought to you by the members at BillWhittle.com. And Bill, there's so much going on since the passing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg last Friday as we record this, and immediately before people even had a chance to contemplate her career or mourn her loss, there was immediately talk about her replacement. There's a lot of discussion about whether or not the Senate is able to do this, but I really don't want to dwell on that. There was a piece in USA Today by a guy who works for essentially an anti-Trump Republican group called Republicans for the Rule of Law, but he's basically trying to make the case that, sure, this Mitch McConnell and the Senate can do whatever they want to do within the bounds of the Constitution, but they may not want to for a variety of reasons. And I'll start with the low-grade one and then get to the retribution from Democrats later. The low-grade one is basically that there are only now some 13 days of work scheduled on the Senate calendar between now and November 3rd, Election Day, and that's largely because people need time to campaign. But if they push right through and go into a Supreme Court nominee confirmation process, it's going to interfere with the ability of Republicans to be out there on the campaign trail trying to get their Senate seats back. What do you make of that argument, Bill?
I don't make much out of it, Scott. I think whether they succeeded or not, if the Republicans who are up for re-election in the Senate made a major effort to get a nominee appointed to the Supreme Court before the session expired and before they leave, I think that'd be the best campaign ad they could possibly come up with, whether they succeed or not.
So let's go right to the retribution then. So the argument is being made now that if the Republicans press ahead with this over Democratic objections and, the Democrats taking the moral high ground now saying, well, we sat on the Merrick Garland nomination from Barack Obama for a year because an election was coming up, that Democrats, if they manage to capture the Senate, hold the House, win the White House, will do a couple of things. Specifically, they'll make a move immediately to cancel the filibuster, to make it not possible for Republicans in the minority in the Senate to be able to filibuster Democratic activities. And number two, to pack the court. There's no constitutional number set on how many justices must be on the U.S. Supreme Court. And it's been a variety of numbers over the years, but they could jack it up to 15 and put their own people in there, thus almost immediately nullifying any conservative advantage that President Trump may have gained by rushing through a confirmation process.
When we had that appointment in Barack Obama's final almost a year, I guess it was, and the argument was that there's an election coming up that the people should decide. I bought that argument. I thought it was a good argument. I still think it's a good argument, but I don't think we should follow that good argument. I personally feel the same way McConnell does, and Lindsey Graham and a number of other people feel. I have watched an awful lot of appalling things come from the Democratic Party in the last several years, in the last decade and a half, really, but nothing on the scale of what I saw with the Brett Kavanaugh hearings. And if the Republicans are able to rush this guy through and get it done, I say do it.
Well, you're sounding like you're wanting to rush into another Brett Kavanaugh fiasco.
There is no Brett Kavanaugh fiasco. His character was assassinated. Specifically, we're not going to rehash all of the reasons.
No, I don't mean we should rehash that. But what I'm saying is, why wouldn't the Democrats find some activity in the past 30 to 50 years that whoever President Trump nominates this time, and use that as their attack angle and just keep it going?
Well, we saw this last time, but ultimately you have to have the votes, right? I mean, ultimately you have to have the votes, and they don't have the votes. So Mitch McConnell can simply say, nope, we don't need an investigation. Nope, we're going to vote on it now. That's my understanding anyway. There's no question that it doesn't matter whether Trump wins the election as far as they're concerned. It doesn't matter. They cannot allow a conservative to take that seat. And the reason they cannot allow it is not for the same reason that a Republican or a conservative couldn't allow a liberal to take the seat. The left governs through the Supreme Court. Their most radical agendas have never been popular with the American people. And instead of having to convince half of a 300 million population base, or even half of a Senate or half of a House of Representatives, all they have to do is find 5 people in black robes to either overturn laws that were rightfully, lawfully passed by the American people through the Congress, and simply have them simply just be stricken by the Supreme Court, or they can also have the Supreme Court rule on things that the Supreme Court has no business ruling on, things that the entire purpose of things like Obamacare and so on were the purview of the legislative branch, and they've shown a willingness to completely disregard that aspect as well. So there you go.
So you're saying the decades of Republican efforts to work their way back into a Supreme Court majority and the continuing efforts to do that are nothing but defensive measures to prevent the liberals from using the Supreme Court to legislate from the bench?
That's precisely correct. I could not have said it better myself.
There are people on the left believe that the conservatives on the court want that, the people who want conservatives on the court want that majority because they have things that they want to do that the people wouldn't vote for, that they cannot accomplish. For example, banning abortion as that's the big ticket item, so-called, on the docket. Mm-hmm. Both sides seem to be saying, yeah, if you give the other side a majority on the Supreme Court, they're going to legislate from the bench. How is it different?
Well, the entire meaning of the word conservative means to hold on to something, to conserve something of value. The entire idea of the conservative movement, which is either a subset or a superset of the Republican Party, depending on how you want to look at things, is about conserving the system of government that was handed down to us through the Constitution that has worked better than any system of government in the history of mankind. And what a conservative court would do, I suspect, if you were dealing with constitutionalists, originalists, then you would probably find that the court would issue a ruling in regard to abortion or something, would simply say, this is not up to the Supreme Court, this is up to the legislature, this is up to the American people to decide. And that's how it should be. And the conservatives don't want to legislate from the bench. The Supreme Court has far more power than it ever should have had, ever did have, prior to the 1960s probably. The Supreme Court was never meant to be this third branch of the government co-equal with the presidency and the legislature. It was basically a referee. It wasn't a source of power to the degree that you could change the country through the Supreme Court. The founders, as you well know, because in your actual real world life, not this person we pay you to be here, you wrote over at PJTV a Freedom's Charter, an in-depth look at the Constitution, how the Constitution was founded, why it was founded, and so on. So you know as well as I do, in your mild-mannered reporter disguise, that the balance of the three-part system of government is totally just skewed. I almost said screwed, but it's both. If it turns out that 5 people can determine the course of the United States of America through simple dictates of a 5-person star chamber. So the entire idea of conservatives on the court is not just so. It's not even a question of a conservative ruling. It's a question of a constitutional ruling. If those two things happen to be the same, then that's why I'm in the camp I'm in. But one of the reasons you want to have conservatives, at least in the majority on the court, is because if everybody does the job they're supposed to do, and I've seen a lot of conservative justices do the job they're supposed to do, then the court is the court that simply rules on cases in terms of the legality of a specific case and does not create legislation or kill legislation. That's the job of the legislature and the president.
Well, you could also make the argument that the reason why Republicans don't want the Supreme Court to be ruled by liberals is that the Republicans don't have the votes in the legislature to do what they think the plan should be. In other words, if the court rules that way, well, frankly, lawmakers could make law. The judges are just supposed to interpret law in light of the Constitution. But lawmakers could make law that would negate essentially anything that the Supreme Court does. However, Republicans have essentially said either A, we don't have the votes to make the law we would want to make, or B, if we did, it would be unconstitutional or ruled unconstitutional by the courts. So it's not that the courts are any less important to Republicans. It's just they like to say that. Isn't that true?
No, it's not true. I'm not aware of any history of conservatives legislating from the bench. I'm not aware of it. I'm not aware of any cases where a conservative cause was where a majority of the population through legislation expressed their will to do one thing, and conservatives through the court decided that, no, we're not going to do that.
40 or 50 years after Roe versus Wade, they still haven't been able to muster a majority in Congress to say, no, we want to make abortion illegal, or we want to put much bigger restrictions on it. They haven't been able to find a constitutional way of doing that, regardless of whether conservatives or liberals held the majority on the court.
We recently, not too long ago, it's probably, I guess it's almost 10 years now, maybe a little bit more, finally had a Supreme Court ruling on something they should have never ruled on in the first place, which was whether or not the individual has a right to bear arms. And to my astonishment, the court ruled in favor of the Second Amendment, which is the same part of the same document that gives them the authority to rule on anything in the first place. So I don't buy the argument that it's either them or us, and they're going to legislate from the bench, and we want conservatives on the court so that we can legislate from the bench. We don't want to legislate from the bench. We find the danger of a court with that much power to be well beyond the risk. And now we're in the situation where the desperation to deprive a progressive Supreme Court majority is real because of what we have seen the courts do throughout the last half a century or more, and what the prospects of them doing in the future mean. We've watched an unprecedented assault on individual rights in the last year with the result of these COVID-19 restrictions, where somebody like the governor of California, at his whim, not based on a scientific metric, not based on a number, not based on a certain number of cases, nothing. When he feels like it, people can go back to work, and he can then go back to his vineyard when he feels like it. And if you think that this is not a template for what progressives want to see happen, then you haven't been paying attention much for the last 110 years or so.
So let's finish up with a political question on this, Bill.
Sure.
And this is just putting on your sort of odds maker hat. Basically, if Republicans do push forward with a confirmation process, they are gambling primarily that this is going to help them at the polls and will be insurance against the possibility of having a Democratic-led Senate, House, and White House. And so, they're making a political calculation that basically says, well, we don't have to worry about Democratic retribution. They won't be empowered to do so. Is that the way you see it?
No, it's not at all the way I see it.
How do you see it?
Well, I think that the people who are going to vote against Donald Trump, because nobody's voting for Biden, let's just come out and say it. There is no support for Joe Biden. There's no enthusiasm for Biden. So the people who are going to come out and vote against Donald Trump are ready to vote against Donald Trump regardless of this. They saw Donald Trump put a relatively moderate conservative in with Neil Gorsuch, and they saw him put a conservative in there with Brett Kavanaugh, and they understand that if he gets a chance to do this again, it will break their hold on the court, which is the only way they have of maintaining their power in this country. So they're going to fight it tooth and nail. They've already. I mean, as you said, the announcement of her passing, the echo hadn't died away. Not only before they started saying they were going to fight it, but before people started saying that we're going to burn the place down if he puts a conservative on there. These people are not. They are not able to handle democracy. They're not able to handle it. So I think that as far as the outcome of the election goes, I think that there's been a sea change in the American people, and I think the American people are well aware of the fact that coming in November, they're going to have a choice between Antifa and law and order. And I really think that's what the election is going to be about. I think it's going to be 1968 all over again. I think Democrats...
Even with all this having with the court right now, you think people are going to not focus on the Supreme Court? I mean, I agree with you. Not many people are excited about voting for Joe Biden, but they might be excited about voting for Ruth Bader Ginsburg Jr.
Well, that's true. But so would the people who would like to not see a Ruth Bader Ginsburg Jr. on the court. be excited about it. I think the main thing about this is it moves the spotlight off of COVID-19 and puts it onto philosophical issues, which is where an election should be. This is the kind of thing we should be talking about. It really is. We should be talking about abortion in America, and we should also be talking about the relative power of the segments of the government that we have designed and instituted. If the conversation turns to those things, then I'm confident that that's going to result in a Republican win. But when I say it's Antifa versus the cops in this election, I think most people out there who either weren't Republicans before, don't like Donald Trump, whatever the case may be, fully understand that they have seen now for 4 months out of control, absolutely personal dictatorship on the part of governors, and they've seen governors and mayors not only allow the cities that they were elected to steward, not only allow them to burn down, but encourage them to burn down. And if the courts go to the progressives, then there will be nothing to stop this kind of dictatorship. This kind of Gavin Newsom feels like that maybe he might let restaurants open today if he has a good day. This is the kind of thing that the progressives will use the court for. They'll use the court to find that these arbitrary powers are constitutional, and that's why this is a fight to the death, and that's why I think that the stakes couldn't be higher, and I think it's a good thing that this country is dealing with substantive issues, and I'm looking forward very much to hearing Joe Biden talk about the appropriate level of the division of powers in the structure of the federal government.
The members of BillWhittle.com have made this program possible, along with some 20 other programs each month. We do 5 episodes of Bill Whittle Now each week. We do 5 episodes of Right Angle, so another 20 programs there. So a total of some 40 news shows plus extras each month. And the members at BillWhittle.com are the ones who make that possible. In addition, they run their own content generation machine at the Bill Whittle member blog. If you'd like to become part of this enterprise and promote the voice of liberty around the world, discussing the daily news in the context of time-tested principles, then just go to BillWhittle.com and click that big green Become a Member button. For Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks for watching.